Hi, everybody. Sorry, waiting for this. Okay. Yes, I am Trent Van Epps. I work on Protocol Guild full-time, and I also contribute through the EF2 core development, but spend the vast majority of time on Protocol Guild and bootstrapping it. Thank you to the organizers for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Very well-run event and a ton of interesting talks, so thank you for having me. As the title says, talking about Protocol Guild, 3+ years of impact and institution building. So, quick show of hands, how many Ethereum core contributors can you name? 1 to 10. It's hard to see, but I can see some representations. All right. How about 10 to 30? Fewer hands. 30 to 100? I see 2 hands. Okay. There's hundreds of people involved in Ethereum core development, and this isn't to shame you for your lack of knowledge, but just to demonstrate that there are many people who are working behind the scenes to maintain the infrastructure that we all depend on, that we're all building on, whether it's Ethereum, an L2, or an EVM-compatible chain. It's all happening behind the scenes in the same way that, there's city services that you don't think about, but you depend on every day. So there's 2 main things I hope that you'll take away from this talk. So 1, Protocol Guild is the leading independent institution which is funding Ethereum core protocol development. And 2, we need your help as members and people who are engaging in the ecosystem to help close that funding gap to support these people doing important work. One frame I really like to return to is the idea of Ethereum as a commons. If you're not familiar with this term, this is the idea that there are shared systems or systems that have collective production of shared resources. Historically, this has been in the natural domain, whether it's pastures or fisheries, forests, or even like shared irrigation systems. And these are things that communities do together to reduce the overhead or the cost of producing this infrastructure that they all benefit from. And we all know well that this doesn't just apply to the natural realm. This can also apply to the digital goods, software. So within this frame, I think there are 3 shared Ethereum resource types. 1, the network, whether it's the mainnet state, EVM chains, history, forks, layer 2s, they're all within this umbrella of distributed system network type resource. And then, of course, the asset, Ether, can be taken in different contexts, whether wrapped, restaked, or bridged. And then finally, the software media, specifications, research, the EVM itself. And all 3 of these, at their confluence, we know to be Ethereum mainnet. And they're interwoven and they interlock in very interesting ways. One of the challenges is that we don't have a complete value loop for how the software is produced. Core devs release software, which is then run to produce the distributed systems. The distributed system defines how the asset is produced or burnt. However, there's no in-protocol funding. We don't have any mechanisms to direct some of this value back to the people that are actually maintaining the software long-term. So what do we have? In place of this is a lot of ad hoc funding experiments. Of course, there's the EF, but I assume most of you know what the EF is and how it operates, so I'm going to look more at the path that led to Protocol Guild as this independent funding institution. So these are specifically projects that I was personally involved with. There's many more in the ecosystem, but I'm not going to talk about them. So 2019, Moloch DAO, I was first a shout from Amin, there we go. I was first as a grantee and then as a member. My first experience really participating in some of this funding of shared resources that the broader Ethereum community would benefit from. From 2020 to 2022, I helped with Open Grants, which was a larger ETH stream to people that were working specifically on Ethereum core development on Ethereum 2, or ETH 2, as it was called at the time, and the merge. In 2021, I worked on some NFT projects. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Beacon book and the 1559 NFT series with some other collaborators. And then over the years, I've engaged with Gitcoin, Giveth, the Optimism retro funding. And over the years, I've come across some shared challenges. Not all of them apply to all of those examples I just gave, but there's some themes that where they meet their limits or have some constraints. So one, some of them are not long-term oriented, right? They have an immediate distribution, and this makes it hard to plan long-term around how much funding is going to be available today or in the future, and whether you're funding the people who are here today or newcomers who will show up in the future. Two, they're centrally curated and governed, specifically the ones that I worked on, some of the NFT projects. It's just me kind of at the helm, deciding who's going to get the funding or trying to make the list myself, but it doesn't engage the broader set of beneficiaries who are actually going to receive this funding. Three, not really a comprehensive coverage. Some of them will focus on specific features, EIP 1559 or ETH2, but they don't really fund the entire Ethereum core development process. Four, they were unable to provide ecosystem exposure, largely being funded in ETH. ETH is a great asset, but it operates within the proof of stake system, and it doesn't give necessarily broader ecosystem exposure. Finally, the insufficient funding scale. When you have to do ad hoc experiments or projects every single time, it makes it hard for the community to center on a specific project as the shelling point or the destination for where this funding should go. So now we're getting into the Protocol Guild origins. As it so happens in the Ethereum community and crypto broadly, there's some topics that the community comes back to very frequently. And one of these is the idea that core contributors are undercompensated relative to the broader market. And so you'll see a screenshot from Danny Ryan. This discussion came up in October of 2021, and he proposed a simple idea to hopefully tackle this challenge, which is, you'll see, he proposes an organization that accepts 1.5% of their tokens that then goes to the individuals who are doing this work. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea. And later that year, a couple months later, on New Year's Eve, we published the initial rough sketch of what Protocol Guild could be. After some deliberation and talking with core devs about what the structure could be, how it could be allocated, etc. And this is a snapshot of the set of mainnet contributors today. So this is, there's a lot of detail. You don't necessarily have to pick all the details out of it, but what I want to communicate is that there's a lot of people that are engaged in Ethereum's political economy, and this is good. We want to have diversity of thought. We want to have many people who have agency within this system to produce and maintain this software. However, prior to Protocol Guild, we didn't have a way to fund them collectively. And what this mechanism does is that it shapes itself to better fit how the software and the system is produced in practice, not in theory. So Protocol Guild is kind of a meta-organization that maps onto all of these individuals and teams, these hundreds of people that are working on Ethereum core development behind the scenes, and it gives a pathway or a vehicle for the broader ecosystem to actually fund this work at scale. And quick overview of how it actually works. So we specify you'll see on the left side, we specify an eligibility framework which defines what work we're interested in funding, which projects or specific repos. This produces a member list of active contributors who meet the requirements that we set as a collective body. And then every quarter we put that into a split on chain, and then the funding flows into it, and people can withdraw funds as they please. And crucially, this goes directly to individuals. There's four main characteristics that Protocol Guild that differentiates it from the broader ecosystem of public goods or common goods funding mechanisms that we try to anchor ourselves to. So one, it's focused on the future. We vest all of our funds through a 4-year vest, and this ensures that people can have assurances about that if they're here today and they continue contributing in the future, there will be funding available to them. It's an immutable vest contract. But not just maintenance, also innovation, right? Ethereum has a lot of things left to do to scale, harden, and improve L1 and the relationship between L1 and L2. There's still a ton of work to do. Two, effective capital allocation, like I touched on. This goes direct to individuals. Today we use time weight, which recognizes longevity and tenure and sort of the local knowledge that you've accumulated over the years, but we're now looking at layering on impact weighting in the near future. Three, we really try to have comprehensive coverage. We don't target a narrow set of teams or a narrow set of projects. We want to cover all of the people that are working on Ethereum core development. And finally, four, we, as much as we can, are interested in having this be a credible institution. So transparent where we can. All of our funding flows are on-chain. Anybody can create Dune queries to see the distribution of tokens, the assets that we have, how much runway is left on the vesting contract, and it's all on-chain, like I said. And finally, yeah, demonstrated impact, and this is growing over time. We've been working on this since 2022, and as we continue to distribute funds, we build trust with the broader community, and hopefully the impact is meaningful to the individuals. So today we have 190 funded members. You can see the growth of the membership since the pilot in 2022. And these members are across research, client implementations, and coordination. These are all really crucial to delivering Ethereum network upgrades. And again, scaling the L1, hardening it, making the guarantees more secure. And I really love this next stat, which is, this is 670 years cumulatively of contributions. And I don't think there's any other mechanism which captures this historic knowledge of, a bug that happened in the past, how can we avoid it in the future? And this really represents the accomplishment of Ethereum core devs and just the experience that they have over the years. So more context into how we've executed on this. Like I said, we ran a pilot with a 1-year vest. That's the small orange triangle on the left side. Just really wanted to test the mechanism, validate our assumptions, and hope we didn't break anything downstream. Once we were happy with that, we moved into a 4-year vest, and that's the much larger triangle there. And we just recently crossed 30 million in various assets distributed directly to individual core devs, which is, I'm really excited for that milestone. Also last year, we launched the 1% pledge, which, as the name suggests, is a commitment by projects that have some existential or crucial relationship to Ethereum, whether it's the distributed system itself, mainnet, or L2s, or the EVM. And it asks them to make this public commitment, and then they follow through on it with actual material funding in the end. I won't go too deep into this, but the diagram illustrates kind of the dynamic we're working with. Core devs have a very specific skill set that's in quite high demand in the entire ecosystem. They have a lot of local domain knowledge that's very useful for a lot of projects that are trying to build things. And however, they don't have the same exposure to upside that the broader ecosystem can avail itself of, whether it's equity in a new startup, or starting a project on your own, or even a larger project that might have a new token, or, like I said, equity. This just doesn't exist for Ethereum. The token already exists. It's Ether. So what we want to do is move these contributors to Ethereum L1 R&D just a little bit up the risk-reward curve, with the understanding that we're not really ever going to be able to completely match this upside potential, but we should at least close this discrepancy somewhat. So current funders, I'm just going to go through them here and give them a shout out, because this is important and it recognizes we should celebrate these individuals, these projects. So the Eigen Foundation, the Ether5 Foundation, Layer 0, Tycho, Puffer, Optimism, Starknet, EnterDAO, Octant, and ZK-Sync have all, they're the top 10 current funders, and they've done incredible work in actually just providing funding and following through on this vision that we have for funding all of Ethereum core development. And a special shout out to the projects that have actually taken this 1% pledge. Again, Ether5, Tycho, EigenLayer, PwnDAO, and Puffer. And we have public pledge commitments from Shape L2, Align Layer, and many more in the near future, and hopefully in the far future to come. So there's been other funders that have participated. If you have sent money to the contract, apologies if you're not included here, but this is inclusive of the pilot and all the different work that we've done over the years and projects that have supported us. So thank you for that. In terms of impact, the median member funding over the past 12 months has been about $70K to each median individual. And over the next 12 months, we'll provide about $63,000 to the median individual. You can see some of the weights there. And this is just using time weighting. So the longer you're around, the higher your weight is in the membership. And from an internal survey last month, 70% of members say this funding is very or extremely important to their continued protocol contributions, which is a very good signal to anchor to. We want to make sure we're actually having impact where we hope it will be. However, this funding gap is still here. So if we assume 150K median salary for all of these people who are working on Ethereum core development, say around 200 people, though there are more, this is about $30 million per year to baseline fund Ethereum core development. And this is, targeting salary, but this doesn't consider equity or bonuses, so likely the real number is much higher. Right now, Protocol Guild only funds $10 million a year through the mechanism. That's $41 million roughly over the next 4 years. While this may seem like a really huge gap, it is actually possible. And so we invite the broader community to engage with this mechanism, understand that they have an important role to help us close this commons funding loop, right? Devs write software, the distributed system uses the software. We have an incredibly rich ecosystem of projects that are building on Ethereum, experimenting, innovating, providing new products and services to people all across the world. And we should be able to construct a mechanism and use it, in the case of Protocol Guild, to route some of that value back to the individuals, provide them with consistent support that they can come to depend on, and in doing so, scale Ethereum to the global impact that we hope it will have in the near future and for many, many years to come. So what's next? Always more funding. We're engaged in as many funding conversations as we can. So if you are an application or a layer 2 and you find something about this pitch compelling, please do reach out to myself or Chiki. He is another team member. We're always happy to talk to people and help you understand how the mechanism works. We can go into more details. Please reach out. And of course, 1% pledges are where we find the most impact, but we're happy to take funding at any scale. We want to continue norm building, which is hard. The norm doesn't exist until you've built it, so it's this chicken and egg process where you kind of have to grind for many years. I'm very excited about the progress we've made, but there's still a lot to do to get people to understand what we're doing, why it's important. As I touched on, we want to layer on impact incentives to recognize people who are going above and beyond. As Ethereum's roadmap changes or shifts slightly or the focus changes, we should proactively manage the eligibility scope. And then finally, we want to increase member accountability. Because if we're asking people to provide funding and then it ends up going to somebody who's been not actually engaged in core development, we are kind of working against ourselves. So hopefully I was able to communicate how Protocol Guild is the leading independent institution funding Ethereum core protocol development, and also that there's still a lot to do. We need your help. Thank you for listening.
Give it up for Trent, please. Thank you, Trent. We have time for one question. All right, if no questions, then we'll